Happy Thursday night. It's Thursday, April the 20th. I'm going to call this workshop to order. And that's my only job. I would say thanks for coming, everybody. So, everybody that's here, come to listen. We're here to listen. The council's scattered around, but we're here to listen to you tonight, not them. Listen better. Come on. Is that better in the back or still bad in the back? More volume. Who can't hear me now? Still bad in the back? I can yell louder, but I don't know if anybody else can. All right, well, I'll just say this. Welcome, everybody. And again, this is a meeting called to talk about rentals, and we're here to listen to you. The council's scattered around the room, so we're here to listen, not to talk tonight. So I'm just going to call the meeting to order, and Megan's going to call the roll.
Wonderful. And if the council could just stand. Jeff Arnold. Oh, perfect. Wendy Onuki. Joe Reeser. Steve Schlock.
Here.
George Sleeper.
Here.
Letitia Wilkins. Scott Smith.
Here.
Make a motion to approve the agenda. Second.
Motion and second to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right, we're all set. I'll turn it over to Katie.
Well, thank you everyone for coming. This is meant to be our short-term rental workshop tonight. This will be set up as an informational meeting. We'll be receiving 5 presentations, up to 15 minutes each. To help facilitate this workshop, we have Mark DeRue. And Mark is the president of Keystone Coaching and Consultants, LLC. His professional background includes more than 20 years of human resources positions in manufacturing and service industries, such as positions with Herman Miller, Transmatic Manufacturing, and Manpower. He earned a bachelor's degree from Hope College, a master's degree in counseling from Western Michigan University, and has pursued additional study in emotional intelligence at the Weatherhead School for Management, Case Western Reserve. He received his designation of Associate Professional Coach from the International Coach Federation, and he serves as an adjunct professor for the Center of Leadership at Hope College. Would you please welcome Mark DeRue?
Thanks, Kate, and good evening. Got a quick question for you. How many of you are familiar with a program called Kids Hope USA? Okay, maybe some of you volunteers in the past. And what it is, it's an opportunity for an area church to link up with an elementary school and to do a little bit of tutoring, ideally once a week for 45 minutes, and just to have a little bit of a connection with the youngster. Well, several years ago, my wife and I were members of a church in Holland, and our church decided to take on Longfellow Elementary School. And so we decided to do that. We thought we'd divide and conquer. So both of us had the same youngster, third grader, whose, ironically, his name was Mark as well. I'll never forget the first day I had a chance to meet Mark, and I thought, Mark, why don't we just try to get acquainted here a little bit? And my suggestion would be that you ask a question, I'll ask a question, just have a little conversation. We'll get to know each other that way. And he said, okay. So I thought, well, I'd start off, and I said, Mark, do you like sports? He said, oh yeah. He says, I'm on a little league team here in Holland, and I play third base. I said, well, that's cool. And he said to me, well, do you like sports? And I said, yeah, I'm a big football fan. And Kate, I'm not sure I can say this, but I went to high school in Columbus, Ohio. Oh! Suddenly, I should probably go out this door right now. So anyway, I said, but I love football. And then I said, well, Mark, I said, do you like to ride a bike? He said, yeah. I said, I ride my bike almost every day to school. And he pauses a second. He says, well, do you like to ride a bike? And I said, I love to ride a bike. In fact, I just got a new bike this past year. Maybe we can bike together sometime. He said, oh, I like that. I said, well, I got another question for you. I said, do you like pizza? He said, oh yeah, I love pizza. I love pepperoni pizza. And he asked me, what? Do you like pizza? Okay. And I said, yeah, Mark, I'm a pepperoni guy too. But I said, listen, why don't we do this? Why don't I ask you a question, but you come back with a different kind of question. So So I said, okay. So I said, well, you know, what's it like to be a third grader here at Longfellow? And he said, well, I guess it's pretty good. Miss Wilson's my teacher, and she's pretty nice. And he pauses and he says to me, well, what's it like to be an old guy? I said, where is the respect here? But we got along just fine. But I wanted to say thanks for your willingness to have an old guy in your presence tonight. And I can recall way back when, South Haven has really been kind of a special place for me. Way back when, there was a place here called the Mariners Inn. Anybody remember that? Kind of a cool restaurant, I think right along the channel. And my girlfriend that night, we just had a delightful time. And when I got home, I proposed to her. So there was something magic in the food that night, you know. And I've also had the good opportunity to do a lot of work with the Michigan Maritime Museum, which is just like a phenomenal asset here in the community. And I don't need to tell you that South Haven, you've done something really good going on here. So it's just a pleasure and a privilege to be with you tonight. Tonight, folks, we're going to have a conversation. And I think there's nothing better than good conversations. And conversations where we listen, okay? We share ideas, and we will be better as a consequence of that conversation. It kind of reminds me of a commercial, and maybe this was a long time ago, a Reese's peanut butter commercial. And there's a jar of peanut butter that's going down the sidewalk. And he's looking off to one side, and coming down the other sidewalk was some chocolate. And as you can imagine, that one was looking the other way until, bam, they collide. And the chocolate says, peanut butter, what are you doing messing with me? And peanut butter does the same thing together. And suddenly they were together. And they paused for a second, and they tasted the new concoction. And it was so much better. Well, I think that's the way maybe conversations can be had as well. We come here with different perspectives and different ideas, and the product can be pretty sweet. And I have to believe that that's going to be the case here in South Haven. So we're going to have a series of presentations to kick this thing off. We will have some presentations, initially by some city staff. Those people are going to include City Attorney Nick Curcio, okay? And he's going to talk about the history of the South Haven STR regulatory program. And then we're going to have some conversation about certification and the enforcement overview. And Kelly Getman, the set, is going to share some things in that regard. And then there's going to be a snapshot report on short-term rentals, an overview by GIS technician here, Ryan Posher. Each of these folks will probably be speaking maybe for about 10 or 15 minutes. At the conclusion of that, we'll have one person who's going to be representing the Neighborhood Needs program, and then another comment, that's going to be Walt Lashani. Close enough? Right? And then for the South Haven Vacation Rental Lines, that's going to be Ashley Greer. So our first half is really going to be an opportunity to listen. We're going to hear a lot of really good comments and reports by these people. At the conclusion of that, we're going to just take like a 5-minute break, and then we're going to come back, and then it's going to be really your opportunity. We're going to have some Q&A, and I'll give a little bit more instruction about what that's going to look like for the second half of our presentation. Okay? So I think with that, Nick, you want to kick us off here, sir?
Good evening. This presentation is going to be about the history of the South Haven regulatory program for short-term rentals. We're going to start with the ordinances that were adopted in late 2015 and 2016 and work our way up through the current ordinance, kind of summarizing the history of the program, how it started, what the original kind of regulations were, and how levels have changed to what we have today.
Okay.
So as I mentioned earlier, we walked through the 2015, 2016 ordinances up through today. For some of the older ordinances, we thought it was helpful to go back to the original materials that were presented to council at the time to consider those ordinances in 2015 and 2016. So you'll see on some of the slides, we just have excerpts from PowerPoint slides that were actually presented to council at the time. And we think that's helpful to kind of show what the concerns were on both sides of the issue back in 2015 and 2016, as well as how the council understood what they were adopting at that time. So the bullet points here are excerpts from a presentation that was given to council on the night we adopted the 2016 ordinances from the prior city attorney at that time. And there's some just kind of interesting things in these bullet points. First, the first couple bullet points make clear that short-term rentals were something that had existed in the city for decades prior to the regulation that were put in place in 2015 and 2016. The third bullet point kind of expresses one of the major concerns that led to the regulatory scheme we have now, which was that people were beginning to, as Airbnb was becoming more popular, VRBO and sites like that were coming into greater use. People were beginning to remodel or build houses specifically for short-term rentals, which is the phenomenon that we obviously see today in large numbers, and that was beginning to kind of come to the forefront of people's minds back in 2015 when the city started looking at this. The last two bullet points indicate that the city didn't have great or didn't really have any data on short-term rentals at that time. City staff knew that there were a lot of them in operation in the city, but didn't have information as to where they were, how many there were, and didn't have police data reports on nuisance complaints and things like that were specific to short-term rentals. So also from that same PowerPoint presentation, the prior city attorney enumerated a lot of the concerns for people who were urging more regulation of short-term rentals. And these are the same kind of concerns that we hear about today, namely the size of buildings that were being built for short-term rentals, the occupancy within each building during the short-term rental term, the amount of parking to serve visitors. There was concern that that might be greater than the parking needed to service a owner-occupied home. Concerns about the behavior of renters, about the maintenance of the properties, renter safety, the total number of short-term rentals, and how many out of, in a given block, how many homes in a given block were being used for short-term rentals, and then the effect of short-term rentals on housing costs. There was a concern then, as there is today, that as more homes become devoted exclusively to short-term rentals, the cost of housing might go up in the city for people who want to live here long-term. On the other side, there were people expressing concerns about the proposed ordinances and about over-regulation generally. They also raised affordability concerns, pointing out that people rent their homes as a means of getting extra income for paying mortgages and taxes and things like that. Concerns about effects of regulation on the local economy, on property values, on businesses that rely on tourists. There was concern about the legality of some of the proposals and the costs the city might incur in litigating various challenges. And then the last bullet point is interesting. There was concerns about, City Council was looking at this in the spring, I believe, and there were concerns about owners who had commitments for the immediately following summer. So you'll see in the original ordinance there are several provisions that say they don't take effect until 2017. So basically the city adopted the ordinance and some of the regulations kind of had a one-year phase-in period to accommodate that first summer under the regulatory program. So it's common to refer to the city's STR ordinance, or this original STR ordinance, as the 2016 ordinance. If you look at the council records, you'll show that the council at the time really started looking at short-term rental regulation in 2015 and adopted a packet of ordinances that council felt was very pertinent to the issue of short-term rentals, even though it didn't explicitly address short-term rentals. It was a more general amendment to the zoning ordinance as it pertains to the city's residential district. So these changes apply to all homes, not just homes that would be used for short-term rentals, but it was thought that they would, at least in part, address the concerns about the overbuilding of homes for purposes of short-term rentals. And the adjustments that were made with respect to size, the maximum height was lowered from 40 to 35, and the allowance of that, what's called a half story, was taken out of the zoning ordinance, so that new homes would need to be 2 stories. And then there's a new parking formula that was introduced at that time in the same package of ordinance amendments. It's the parking formula that still applies in the residential zones today, where was previously just 2 parking spaces per home. It's now 2 parking spaces per home, up to 3 bedrooms. If once you get over 3 bedrooms, for each bedroom, you have to have an additional parking space. So turning to the 2016 ordinance, 2016 ordinance were the first ordinances in the city that expressly defined short-term rentals and regulated them as a distinct use. So it was an amendment to the zoning ordinance. It was very short, basically just to the definition section and to the permitted uses in each section, saying define short-term rental as what we know today, to a rental term of 2 to 29 nights. Then the regulatory ordinance did a number of things. It established the maximum occupancy formulas for the various districts, and these are the same formulas that we have today. Interestingly, this is one of those provisions that kind of had the 1-year grace period where it didn't take effect until 2017, even though it was enacted in 2016. I won't go through the details of these formulas, but these are the formulas that still apply in determining the occupancy of a short-term rental today. And then some of the other provisions of that original ordinance is that all dwellings used as short-term rentals need to be registered. You need to have a local agent within 45 miles, posted contact information, had to distribute what was called the good neighbor policy, and it still is called that to renters. It was something the city developed as part of the 2016 ordinance package. And also smoke detector and carbon monoxide requirements that are still part of the rental inspection check. So some of the key differences, I will go into the details of today's ordinance in later slides, but just to highlight a few of the big differences between what was originally enacted and what is now in place in the city. The 2016 ordinances was just a one-time registration. The city was really, it was largely for data gathering purposes. City council wanted to know how many short-term rentals there were and where those rentals are, so they could have the kind of data to evaluate further policy changes, which is what kind of led to the 2018 ordinances that we'll later talk about. The 2016 ordinance did not distinguish between personal and business short-term rentals. That's a concept that was put into the ordinance later, as we'll talk about. And also, although the City Council and Planning Commission discussed the topic of saturation of rentals extensively in 2016, didn't ultimately adopt any regulations to that effect, largely because the council felt that it didn't have the data to do so without having the registration requirement in place first, in order to get a better sense of how many rentals there were in the city. So we'll now turn to the 2018 amendments. I'm going to lump all amendments after 2016 into this part. For the most part, the city's current ordinance was adopted in 2018. There have been a few very minor tweaks to it after that. Those tweaks pertain to the formula of the 1-to-4 ratio, just some changes to the details of that, as well as to the number and positions of people who perform rental inspections. So those are minor changes. For the most part, the city's current ordinance comes from an ordinance that's adopted in 2018, and I'm just going to speak generally about the present ordinance as if it was all adopted in 2018. So when council revisited the STR program in 2018, one of the major topics that it wanted to tackle was the issue of saturation. At that point, it had 2 years of data on short-term rental registration and was able to kind of look granularly about where things were in the city and how many there were total in a way that it couldn't do when it first tackled the issue in 2016. So at the Planning Commission level, the Planning Commission looked at a number of different ways to potentially address the issue to control kind of the future creation of short-term rentals. They looked at overlay zones as a possible option. They looked at spacing between rentals as a possible option, 500 feet between or 1,000 feet between, things of that nature. Then ultimately settled on what's called a capping system, and rather than having a fixed cap, it came up with kind of a floating cap that's referred to as the 1-to-4 ratio, and I'll explain how that worked. But all that is to say that the Planning Commission had spent many, many months in 2018, and City Council, I think, ultimately did as well, looking at different options, and ultimately arrived at the option that was embedded in the 2018 ordinance that was ultimately adopted. So first off, I alluded to this earlier, the 2018 ordinances define 2 new terms that now have significant regulatory effect in the city. One is what's called personal STR. This is a dwelling unit that can be, so any dwelling unit in the city can be registered as a short-term, personal short-term rental. It requires a satisfactory inspection with a fairly minimal inspection fee. The fee for these is intended only to cover the cost of inspection. I think it's around $125. I'm not sure if that's the current figure. But it's been in that range since this part of the program was brought into effect. And then the big requirements on these rentals are that they can only be rented up to 28 days in the calendar year. So they're kind of intended to be owner-occupied type properties with relatively minimal amounts of renting. And then the property owner is supposed to notify the zoning department before each rental term and provide the dates where the unit is going to be rented, so that staff has that information if complaints are received or something to that effect. So business STRs are a zoning classification that doesn't have a limitation on the number of days it can be rented, and there are two notable restrictions that apply to business STRs that don't apply to personal STRs. And I'll talk about these on later slides, but they're the off-street parking standards and the 1-to-4 capping ratio that I've been referring to. Starting with off-street parking requirements, you'll remember that I said back in 2015, the council adopted new off-street parking requirements for all residences. And what that did under zoning law is it rendered a lot of residential properties in the city to be what's called legally non-conforming. It means you don't have the amount of parking that the zoning ordinance currently requires, but you're allowed to continue living in your house and you don't have to add new parking because your parking arrangement predated the ordinance that required more parking. So previously, you could just register your home, even if it had non-conforming parking, you could still be a short-term rental. What this ordinance did is it said if you're going to be a business short-term rental, you have to come into conformance with the the new 2015 standards. So those formulas about the number of bedrooms, if you're going to be becoming new business short-term rental, you have to either add parking or subtract bedrooms until you meet those 2015 standards, which wasn't previously a requirement, and is only a requirement for new business short-term rentals, not ones that were already operating prior to this ordinance, and not ones that are personal STRs, obviously. So that's the parking piece. Then there's this idea of capping. So the Planning Commission looked at what are called fixed caps, which would have been if the Planning Commission had said there can't be more than 500 short-term rentals in the city or 600 rentals within the city. It ultimately didn't go with those options and went with it was called a floating cap, meaning that the actual cap in any given year depends on a number of factors. And the Planning Commission and the City Council tied that cap to the ratio of business short-term rentals in the city to non-business dwelling units. So this is a fairly complicated idea, And in order to implement it, the ordinance created a process where business short-term rentals are distributed each year through an annual allocation that occurs in February. And an annual report is prepared regarding the number and location of existing business STRs that's then used to calculate the number of certificates that are available in each year. So here's the formula. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about this because we have our GIS technician who's going to do a whole separate presentation on this annual snapshot report and how the allocation is made. Essentially, you add up the number of dwelling units, a total number of dwelling units in the city, excluding a couple of specialized places that the ordinance specifically calls out. Then you count up the total number of existing business STRs, excluding the ones that have expired for less than a year. And then you solve for this equation. And again, the GIS technician, Ryan Foster, will go into more detail on this. So once the capping formula is calculated each year, if there are more pending applications for business short-term rentals than the ratio allows, then the city would conduct a lottery to determine who gets that limited allocation. That's never happened in the city previously. If there are fewer pending applications than there are in total allocation, then city staff will accept and process applications until all the remaining certificates are issued. That's also never been an issue in the city until recently, as I'll go into. So previously, the allocation has always been significantly under the number of pending applications, and staff has been able to accept applications and process applications on a year-round basis without running up against the cap. For the first time since the program began, there are currently no certificates available. That's been within the last month or two. The 2023 allocation of certificates has run out, and there's currently no business short-term rental allocations available. More could potentially become available in 2024, depending on how the formula shakes up at that time. So that's the end of my presentation. I've been told that there were hold questions to the end. So thank you, and I turn it over to Kelly next for the session.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming tonight. I have the next part of the presentation. I will be running through the short-term rental application process and a little bit of code enforcement. Some of you in the room are very familiar with this process, so feel free to tune out if this is boring, but for the rest of you, maybe you'll learn something you didn't know. So in order to rent short-term in the city of South Haven, properties must be registered annually as personal or business units. And property owners or agents have to submit an annual application along with any other required paperwork to the Building Services Department. And this type of paperwork might include your local agent form, as Nick mentioned, for any property owner that doesn't live within 45 miles of the city. You've got to identify a local agent who does. If your property is in an LLC, we're looking for your operating agreement, your ID, inspection, application fees have to be submitted as well. So your application documentation is reviewed by the STR coordinator in our office, and once everything is complete, we can start processing that application. We'll be verifying the maximum occupancy for the dwelling unit and checking that off-street parking is available. And currently, we do have a paper-based application process, but we are going to transition later this year to an electronic process that should be more efficient for us and for property owners and agents. Here's a copy of what the STR application looks like. I won't read this slide to you. And here's a copy of the local agent form, just for those of you who aren't familiar with what these forms look like. So every STR property in the city must pass a safety inspection. Again, this is not a zoning inspection, it's a safety inspection. The inspections are annual for business STRs and every 2 years for personal units. The inspections are scheduled through the STR coordinator at City Hall and conducted by the STR coordinator and staff from Shays. Sometimes during those inspections, they find deficiencies. Commonly, these are things like faulty smoke detectors, missing smoke detectors, missing fire extinguishers, and these items do have to be corrected before the property can be rented. And we do usually require a re-inspection before we can issue that rental certificate. We do make the inspection checklist available online so that the general public, if they're interested, and property owners can see what we're looking for on those inspections before the inspectors come to the property. There's a copy of that inspection form. Page 2 showing the criteria and where everything comes from. Again, I'm not going to read this. You can check it out later. So once we have all of your application information and your inspection is complete, that certificate is ready to be issued. And those certificates are available for pickup at City Hall. We will print out a certificate in that 24-point font size, and we ask that you place it in a prominent first floor window of the property. And we are printing certificates in a different color each year, as well as in a different color for personal units versus business units. And that's really so that members of the public can tell which properties are STR properties and whether or not those certificates are current. The certificates do provide the local agent information, so you have the name of the local agent and the phone number where that person can be reached if you need to reach them. Here's a copy of what that rental certificate looks like. Okay, so as we are processing STR certificates, application status is something that is available for you, the property owner, or for the general public to see through BSNA Online. And this is something we've had some questions about lately because as certificates are being processed, properties will show as being on hold. And they can be on hold for a number of reasons. Usually, we're waiting to schedule an inspection, we're waiting for payment, we're waiting on corrections from an inspection. Maybe there's a re-inspection needed. And if I can just jump back to this previous slide for a second. This property is a really great example. You can see the expiration date is not until June of this year. However, this property owner has submitted their application for their next certificate because they know that our office takes about a month to get an inspection scheduled, and they know they don't want this certificate to expire without having the next one ready. So if you go and look at this property online, you're going to see a hold on the current application, but the property is currently certified and is able to rent. So once all of the application items are finished and inspection is finished, you'll see that status shift to certified. That means the certificate is ready for pickup, and once the certificate has expired, you'll see property status change to closed. Occasionally, you may still see a property status show as canceled if the rental process was started and never finished. You may occasionally see something that says expired, but we don't use that much anymore. I'm going to switch gears to enforcement. Our office has a couple of code enforcement officers to ensure compliance with city codes, and STR properties are subject to city codes just like any other property. We're looking for nuisance violations like too much noise, long grass, garbage cans being left out too long. Our enforcement officers are proactive with code enforcement. This is something that not all communities do, but South Haven does. We spend time reviewing properties, looking for violations, And we're also reactive. We do respond to complaints and questions about potential violations. If there are too many violations, as mentioned, we can revoke an STR certificate, but we have not done this to date. Specific to the short-term rental ordinance, most commonly, code violations include renting without a certificate. Maybe a property was never certified or the certificate has expired. We also see exceeding maximum occupancy or for personal units renting for more terms than allowed. We use software to identify unregistered properties and rental activity. And our current program uses reviews to assist us with that. Not all renters need a review. So going forward, we will have a more robust program that's going to use booking activity. So this will help us with our code enforcement efforts. It's important to note that whatever enforcement action we take, it really does require a lot of investigation and documented evidence. The STR-related citations are more costly than other code enforcement citations, and we know that that documentation is important because when these tickets are challenged in court, the documentation is what helps that citation to hold up. Here's a chart that just shows our 2022 violations by category, so you can see that renting an unregistered dwelling unit was by far the most common violation that we saw last year. Just wrapping up, as you heard from Nick, this program has been through a lot of changes over the past couple of years. I'm sure there will be more to come. For our staff, we're just looking forward to hiring additional part-time staff to help us administer the program. We are also looking to increasing our software capacity. We'll have that electronic permitting module made available. We'll be doing increased rental activity monitoring, and we'll also be getting a 24/7 hotline that will be available to the community. That's sort of a one-stop shop to report suspected violations or to make complaints. And we're hoping that that will be something that makes it easier for those of you with concerns about specific rental properties. And that's what I have for you this evening. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ryan Boscher. I'm the GIS technician for the city, so I put together maps for the city and statistics, and once a year the city compiles an annual snapshot report for short-term rentals, and we're going to be going over how some of those numbers are generated and some of the information within that report. So the short-term rental ordinance has 3 requirements that are to be included in this annual report. The first requirement is a map showing the location of all parcels in the city that have dwelling units on them, as well as where all the short-term rentals are currently located. The second requirement is the total number of all short-term rentals and the total number of business non-exempt short-term rentals. And the third item in the report that's required is to provide the total number of housing units that can be registered as business short-term, non-exempt, under the 1-to-4 ratio. So this map illustrates the first requirement. All the gray parcels on this map are where there are dwelling units in the city, and all the yellow dots represent where there were short-term rentals at the beginning of 2023. At that point in time, there were a total of 708 short-term rentals in all personal and business categories. The 1-to-4 ratio, Nick already went over some of this. Basically, 20% of the housing stock is allowed to be a business non-exempt short-term rental. This ratio is established to kind of control the number of business non-exempt rentals within the city. Again, we already addressed business rentals are basically those that are rented for more than 28 days out of the year, and personals for 28 days or less. So we've addressed what a business and personal is. Now, exempt versus non-exempt. The city's determined that there's certain housing types that are unlikely to be short-term rentals, for example, apartment units or housing commission units, and also housing units such as attached condominiums, where there's more regulation by the associations, so they have better control over how those short-term rentals are run and operated. So those types of housing units were exempted. So instead of having the 20% of all the housing stock in the city, we dropped that down, the total number of housing units minus those that are exempted. So the housing commission, apartments, and attached condos. And that brings that number down, so the 20% is based on that lower number. If we didn't have exempt units, 732 business non-exempt units would be allowed, but because we subtract those from the total, 20% of the lower number is 497. So these are some pictures of examples of attached condominiums within the city limits. These types of housing are exempt from the ratio. Here's a list of all the different attached condominium associations within the city limits. There's a total of 619 attached condo units in the city, and those housing units are removed from the total number of housing units the 1-4 ratio is based off of. Additionally, there's 4 neighborhoods or planned unit developments in the city. The city determined in an effort to encourage business non-exempt short-term rentals to locate outside of established neighborhoods, to encourage them to go into newer neighborhoods. This was one method of doing that. Those neighborhoods are Harbor Club, formerly known as Woodland Harbor, Maplegate, Trailside, formerly known as Everett Park, and Sherman Hills, which has yet to be developed. This map shows the location of those 4 different neighborhoods. It also shows the number of housing units in each of those neighborhoods that could potentially be business non-exempt rentals. Trailside has 19, Harbor Club 71, Maplegate 11, Sherman Hills currently has 0. That's not the number of short-term rentals there, that's the number of housing units that are currently in those neighborhoods. The South Haven Housing Commission has 2 buildings within the city. 2 of them are apartment buildings that have 40 units in each building, and they also have single-family homes. There's 42 of those within the city. Those are also exempt from the 1-4 ratio number. And finally, apartment complexes. Here's a couple pictures of different apartment complexes within the city limits that are exempt from the short-term rental ratio. For this exemption, an apartment building or complex has to have 12 units or more. As you can see, there's the list of them. There's 416 apartment units within the city. Those units are excluded from the ratio. And finally, this map shows the location. It shows the 4 PUD neighborhoods that are exempt. It shows those in brown. Attached condos are shown in purple. Apartments in orange. And single-family housing commission homes are shown in yellow. So those are all the areas where business non-exempt units are exempt from the 1-4 ratio. So what is counted and what is not? Anything that is certified or on hold, Kelly mentioned what it means to be on hold in her presentation. as well as anything that has been expired, canceled, or closed within the last 12 months is also counted. This gives people the opportunity to renew their certificate should it have lapsed recently, gives them more time to get their application in for the following season. So calculating the 1-to-4 ratio. Sounds simple, 20%, how hard could it be? Well, first we have to establish how many housing units are in the city. It's not really a number we track. So using the 2020 census, there are 3,560 housing units in the city. So we're in 2023, so we take the 2020 census and we look at what's been added and what's been subtracted. Well, there's been 111 permits issued for new housing units, and there's been permits issued for 10 housing unit demolitions. So if you take 3,560, 111 new units, 10 demolished, you end up with 3,661 housing units. So the next step is to subtract those that are exempt from the total 1-to-4 ratio. So the 4 PUDs, the apartments, housing commission, and attached condos, there's a total of 1,178 exempt units. So when you subtract those from the total housing units, you're left with 2,483 units. And that's the magic number that we use the 1-to-4 ratio on. 20% of that equals 497. And that's where we cap the business non-exempt units at. As you can see in the graph below, in 2019, middle of the year, we had 478 business non-exempt units. Then 2020 came around with COVID. You can see the numbers went down, and they've been recovering ever since. At the beginning of the year, we had 449 business non-exempt short-term rentals, and now we have 497 because we breached the cap. This graph just shows 4 different types of short-term rentals: personal exempt, personal non-exempt, business exempt, business non-exempt. At the beginning of the year, we had 708 total for all 4 categories. 449 of those were business non-exempt. With an allowance of 497, there were 48 certificates available at the beginning of the year, and those have all been spoken for. So this is 1-to-4 ratio in its entirety. You start out with the 2020 census number, 3,560. You add the new housing units, 111, 10 demolitions. You subtract the PUD housing units, 101 of those. Subtract detached condos, 619. Exclude the housing commission single-family homes, 42. Exclude apartment complexes, 416. You're left with 2,483. 20% of that is 497. In order to see short-term rental statistics and trends over time, what we've done is we've established different neighborhoods based on different geographical areas of the city. And we've also tracked statistics by for exempt planned unit development. So in this map, this is a map of all 708 short-term rentals that existed at the beginning of the year. For example, the Brown neighborhood on the southwest side of the downtown along Monroe Boulevard there, 32% of all short-term rentals were located in that neighborhood, and 29% of all housing stock in that neighborhood were short-term rentals. Whereas a little further away from the lake on the southeast side of downtown, in the purple area, the numbers are lower. Roughly 12% are short-term rentals in that neighborhood, and of the complete housing stock, the short-term rentals represent 10% of all the housing stock in that neighborhood. This map is very similar, same neighborhoods, but this just shows the business non-exempt rentals. Looking at those 2 neighborhoods again, on the southwest side of downtown along Monroe Boulevard, 45% of all the business non-exempt rentals are in that neighborhood, or 28% of the housing stock in that neighborhood are business non-exempt rentals. And looking again at the neighborhood in purple on the southeast side of town, the numbers are much lower at 14% of all business non-exempt rentals are in that neighborhood, and 10% of all the non-exempt housing in that neighborhood are business non-exempt rentals. And that's all I got.
You know, I teach a class at Hope College, and my students have to do presentations as well. And for the 3 presenters we've had at this point, you all deserve an A+, no question about it, okay? My head's swimming with a lot of great information, but you've certainly done your homework and you've done it well, so thank you so much for that. So now we're going to have a couple other presentations, and Walt's going to do the first one here from the neighborhood the neighborhoods presentation. So Walt, if you would come up, and I'm just going to ask that because this is an information session, and our second half will allow for some Q&A, that we allow those questions and answers and comments for that second half, and that even as Walt is sharing some things tonight, it might resonate with some of you, and some of you may want to applause right then and there. Let's hold on to that applause until Walt, you're finally done, as we find our other guests tonight. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that sterling introduction. Good evening, everyone who took the time to come out here tonight, and especially council members. I'm Walt Picotti, a resident of South Haven, and I'm here representing the Neighborhoods Need Neighbors, a large group of diverse residents that have come together on this issue. We fully embrace tourism as a key industry in Southwest Michigan and South Haven. That's how many of us found South Haven. And despite the efforts to paint us otherwise, we have always accepted that short-term rentals are a reality here as they are nationally and internationally. We just want what the residents want, a balance of short-term rentals in our community to preserve the character and legacy of our neighborhoods for future generations. This balance has been progressively disrupted since the original ordinances were enacted. What we are asking again tonight is for this council to revisit and reform the existing short-term rental ordinances. When the original ordinances were enacted, promises were made to revisit them. Why such a delay in doing so? While short-term rentals are identified as high priorities of council for the current and upcoming fiscal years, when will this priority be treated as such? There haven't been any serious discussions about short-term rentals during this entire fiscal year. Only much data gathered. And while the imbalance has worsened, even tonight's workshop is labeled as information gathering event. When will serious discussions begin? We ask 3 things of this council. Discuss the ordinances along with the hundreds of concerns residents have brought to you and city staff about problems with the substance, administration, and enforcement of the current ordinances. Work with the Planning Commission to enact changes that address residents' concerns and follow best practices like overlays, permit limits, density considerations, among others. Best practices that evolve and have been successfully implemented by many other communities throughout Michigan and around the country, and in many cases, including Michigan, have already withstood legal challenge. Number 3, hold accountable those responsible to administer, enforce, and defend our ordinances strictly but fairly, consistent with both the substance and the intent of the ordinances. Our request is quite simple. Do something. Do what the residents want and do something now. Let's turn to the 4 reasons why we think change is necessary. Reason 1, The economic costs of short-term rentals in South Haven have been ignored, downplayed, and are hindering our economic growth. The short-term rental ordinances that were enacted in 2016 and 2018, city management reported last week that there are 766 registered short-term rentals in South Haven, 681 of them being businesses. Of the 681 businesses, 190 are in attached condominiums and PUDs. The remaining 491 businesses are sitting in our residential neighborhoods. South Haven's 766 short-term rentals are highly disproportionate to the number of short-term rentals in other Michigan towns, including towns with populations much larger than ours. On the other hand, in the past 30 years, South Haven has lost 1/3 of its population. The contrast of these two trends is significant. Using our housing stock for seasonal rentals is inconsistent with trying to reverse a population decline, especially when we have no other land on which to replace the houses that are now short-term rentals. Let me be clear. Short-term rentals are not solely the cause of our population decline. However, they have significantly contributed to the weakening of our diverse neighborhoods, which are the economic foundation of small towns like ours, thus contributing to our population decline. While the city spent considerable time and taxpayer money to estimate the economic benefits of short-term rentals to South Haven, nobody ever talks about the costs. So let's address that tonight. First, let's consider these observations. Losing 2 or 3 families on a block can be devastating to the spirit of that neighborhood. How about when there are only 2 or 3 families left on the block because all the other houses are now short-term rentals? Losing a family is a loss to our economy. Common sense alone tells you that a full-time resident adds much more to the local economy than a short-term rental occupied for 12 to 14 weeks a year. Those who live next door to a short-term rental know firsthand the uncertainty that summer brings, an uncertainty that makes reasonable people want to leave town. And most tragically, the gentrification occurring because of the short-term rentals is having a profound impact on our already marginalized population that needs affordable housing. Now let's consider what having 491 businesses in our neighborhoods does not mean for South Haven. The 491 business owned almost exclusively by people not living in South Haven or even Michigan. Close your eyes if you want to visualize the picture. 491 houses where no one has a job, no one goes to school, local income is not earned, but that's 491 addresses. No children are living in those 491 houses or attending South Haven public schools. Our school system does not receive the $9,000 per student in a seat from Lansing each year from those missing children, meaning millions in operating revenue that is not going to our schools every year, year after year. Those missing millions, a fair share of which was likely collected from South Haven property owners, are going elsewhere. 491 houses where no one is buying groceries go to South Haven restaurants or gas stations, except during the 12 to 14 week season, which are downtown merchants and restaurants. They don't want to have a seasonal business. Every one of those would like to have the security of a year-round revenue stream. 491 houses where no one's buying groceries. Sorry about that. They have to reduce hours. Anyway, 491 houses that are not buying new or used cars from local dealers. 491 houses that are not filling seats in South Haven's churches and temple. Consider further, does anyone from a short-term rental do these things in South Haven? Have their teeth cleaned, go to a doctor unless it's an emergency, attend Rotary or Kiwanis, need hospice care or end-of-life service, check on a neighbor, comfort someone who is struggling? Do I have to tell you the answer? 491 empty houses means South Haven has fewer teachers, car mechanics, pastors, physical therapists, janitors, doctors, dentists, nurses, dental hygienists, receptionists, car dealers, bus drivers, pharmacists, salespersons, bankers, and lawyers. And economists may estimate the seasonal economic benefit of short-term rentals, but they can't begin to estimate the year-round costs of short-term rentals on a community because it's immeasurable, so they just don't talk about it. We, the residents, live this loss every day, and we refuse to accept this as the future of South Haven. The current ordinances are misaligned with our master plan. South Haven's master plan is the blueprint for our community's future. We think it should guide our decision-making. The Michigan Zoning and Enabling Act mandates the Planning Commission to base decisions on a plan. The current ordinances negatively affect at least two main goals of the master plan. First, large purpose-built short-term rentals undermine the goal of preserving their neighborhood character. The master plan requires a review of short-term rental management and its impact on neighborhoods. This has never been done. Second, the goal of improving neighborhoods with diminished character calls for amending the zoning ordinance to maintain architectural standards and compatibility. However, multi-story short-term rentals are essentially cottage hotels built to prioritize rental revenue with little attempt to match the traditional architecture of the neighborhoods. Reason 3, residents have asked for change through multiple vehicles, yet no one has seemed to be listening. 2022 was a year of data gathering about short-term rentals. Across the board, the message consistently delivered is, our residents want change. Consider these 4 data points. Neighborhoods Need Neighbors surveyed all registered voters in South Haven. 3/4 of those responding want more restrictions on the number of short-term rentals. Greg Godden's, the city-hired consultancy for creating a city vision, issued this report finding there is a widely held perception that more short-term rentals have been permitted than are healthy, and they are eroding the very characteristics of the community that have led to the growth of short-term rentals. Number 3, Neighborhoods Need Neighbors delivered petitions to the city containing 422 signatures collected in just 10 days, asking the city to place a measure on the ballot that would have balanced short-term rentals in residential districts. And number 4, in the Western Michigan University survey commissioned by the city, 2/3 of the residents responding want fewer short-term rentals in South Haven, and over 80% say short-term rentals not occupied by their owners should be treated as businesses. What more do the residents need to say to you to understand they want change? The city staff and city attorney have proven unwilling to effectively administer, enforce, and defend the short-term ordinances that we have. City staff should strictly administer and enforce our ordinances according to their plain meaning. Instead, city staff often look the other way or claiming vagueness that doesn't exist. They creatively interpret the short-term rental ordinances to work the way they wish they work. We wonder why they do this. We believe staff probably know they're not administering and enforcing the ordinances correctly, but are doing so because they've been advised that if they do it the right way, the city will be sued. We also believe the city's attorney is prone to advise council to act in a way so they aren't even sued when the law is on the side of the city. For instance, the city of New Buffalo, with the effort of a strong mayor and a zealous city attorney, recently won all 17 cases involving short-term rental issues, establishing that a city can restrict short-term rentals in residential zoning districts. Residents are tired of pointing out missteps in applying and enforcing the short-term rental ordinances only to have their emails and calls ignored. Council, step up. On behalf of the residents, please to direct staff and our attorney to aggressively defend the city. This fourth reason for change is reason for those who support the status quo or even expanding to more short-term rentals. They think that would be the end, more enforcement. But that's where they stop. They think fixing this issue is enough, and that's where we differ. Because fixing this issue won't fix the larger problem of having too many. To conclude, none of us should have to be here tonight. Our current ordinances were well-intentioned attempts to govern short-term rentals, but there have been significant unintended consequences that have caused unnecessary division within the city. You've been looking for an easy way out of this for too long. There isn't one. But you're not alone. Read the hundreds of articles online about all the communities in Michigan and across this country where residents are experiencing the same problems with short-term rentals, and local governments are grappling with how best to deal with the balance and impact. To that point, residents of nearby communities are watching our group and reaching out in support as they grapple with their own local short-term issues. Our signs are showing up in other communities up and down the Michigan coast. We're excited that others share the reasonableness and value of our message as we join forces to become a Lakeshore District Coalition, fighting for our residents and our residential neighborhoods. So please, Council, look at best practices being used by other communities and reform our approach to short-term rentals so that our program is more balanced and consistent with the wishes of the residents of South Haven. When it comes time to finally discuss the substance of this project, we look forward to rolling up our sleeves and working beside you to offer constructive suggestions as workable solutions. One last thing, council members. Hesitating to address these problems is only going to make things worse. It's time you stood up and addressed the actual people who live here with a solution that brings balance. The choices are yours. You can stand up and act. You can put it on a ballot in November and let the voters decide. And if you don't, the voters are going to decide either way in November. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you all. And now for the Vacation Rental Alliance, Ashley.
All right, good evening, everybody. I'm Ashley Greer. I'm the president of the South Haven Vacation Rental Alliance. And before I get into the presentation, I thought it'd be good to maybe take some time and let you know who I am and even how this alliance formed in the first place. My husband, son, and I, we relocated to South Haven just over a year ago now. We're full-time voting residents of the city of South Haven. We're business owners in this community, and we also are short-term rental owners. My husband and I really wanted to find a way to work together. We wanted to be in business together to be able to create and spend more time with our family. We love the idea of creating experiences for guests and contributing to the community that we moved to, so we sold everything we own, we quit our jobs, and we moved to South Haven. Renting out our home allowed us to do that. Within about a week of us moving here and us putting our short-term rental permit in our window, we were quite shocked by the way that people spoke about us, spoke about our family on social media, at council meetings. And the kicker there was nobody ever got to know us. Nobody knocked at our door, nobody said, let's meet the new neighbors, hear why they're here. They just had assumptions and stories about who we were. We immediately thought, wow, we made the wrong decision in moving to South Haven. We've been coming here most of our lives. We've been spending our summers here for the last few years. We didn't just tiptoe into South Haven. We definitely dove into the deep end and had to find out a way to make it work. There's some people in this audience here that reached out to us and said, no, that's not what the city of South Haven is about. That's not how everybody feels, and introduced us to a lot of other community members. We made a lot of friends through our families at St. Basil's, and we realized that, no, we can make this work, we can stick this out. It was late in the summer, and my in-laws, who are here and are also voting residents of the city of South Haven, they said to me one day, don't let this group bully you out of the community that you love. And so we said, you know what, maybe it's not just my husband and I that are on an island, maybe there's other people that feel this way. So we went out on Facebook one day and we said, if anyone's concerned about what's going on and wants to get together and talk about it, why don't we meet? So my husband and I, thinking we were going to get 5, 6 people out for a cup of coffee, ended up having 70 people show up to our very first gathering. And it wasn't just vacation rental homeowners, it was businesses, concerned neighbors, other members of the community. And we realized we've really got a great group of people here. Let's see if we can do something proactive and positive as a group of members. So we immediately created a vision statement for the South Haven Rental Alliance. And I'll preface this with saying we've only existed since September, so we're very new in this alliance. Our vision statement was this: we are South Haven community members. We're supporting a diverse, growing year-round economy where people can come to work, play, visit, and live. We work in conjunction with city policymakers, residents, and businesses to promote respectful dialogue and responsible tourism. And I think tonight is our opportunity to actually act on that respectful dialogue. It's been a very one-sided conversation at this point. We haven't really been able to sit at the table and have a conversation about what's best for everybody, and we're really excited for that opportunity to do that. As far as our members are concerned, we are your neighbors. Obviously, I am one of your neighbors, but 17% of our members are full-time residents in the city of South Haven. Most of us spend our winters in our rentals when we're not renting them out. Some vacation in them themselves. A lot of people are planning on living in them eventually. We represent over 51% of all the short-term rentals in the city of South Haven. Now we can do that because all of the major property management groups are also a part of our alliance, so we're able to have a fairly wide reach. I think this is important to show. 92% of every single short-term rental, this is non-exempt and exempt, is a homeowner who owns one single home. There's been a lot of rhetoric, especially up along the lakeshore, where they say it's large conglomerates, big corporations that are buying up homes. That's simply not true. Out of the entire list, there is not one single corporation or conglomerate that is buying up homes. If you see a home, my home is under an LLC. I used to own long-term rentals in the city of Grand Rapids. We did this for liability purposes. So do many other short-term home rental owners. It's also something, if you're ever putting it into a family trust, maybe it's being handed down, it will typically go into an LLC. So I encourage people to think a little when they see LLC. Don't assume it's some large business that's buying up these homes. Most likely it's family members or couples that have purchased that home and put it into an LLC. We also wanted to be, as I said, proactive and a productive group. We wanted to work with the city to say, how can we make this world the best for both of us? So we created committees, the first of which was our data committee. One thing we wanted to do with this committee was ensure we were always using third-party verified sources for any information that we shared. We believe that facts and figures are really the key to making educated decisions on what's best for this community. We accept that facts are facts, even if they are not in our favor. So this is something we established right off the bat to make sure whatever we're doing, we know that it's what's best for all of us. We also created a safety and regulation committee. Now I believe this is going to be one of our strongest committees. You heard a lot about the strict inspection process that's already in place. We have good neighbor guides, but we wanted to go a step further with the communication with the city. So we actually have monthly meetings where we sit down with the Kellys and talk about all the things that are going on, what's happening with the inspection process, what's working, what's not. Our group all gets together and we channel it through this committee. We're trying to reduce the number of individual questions that are coming at city staff and address them amongst themselves if we can. We also talk a lot about best practices amongst ourselves. So if there's something that we can do better, we want to know about it. We want to be good neighbors. A lot of us as well, my own home, we have the good neighbor guide, but we go above and beyond that. There's no smoking, no partying, no events allowed at our homes, and a lot of others are doing that too. We stay in these homes ourselves, we respect our guests, we respect our neighborhoods. And I'll take a moment from that. If there's ever anyone that's concerned with something going on in their home, don't go to social media. Why don't you call the person that owns that home yourself? Call the property management group. That's why there's a local agent. We are all within a few minutes of responding to anything going on at the home, and that's part of the reason why that number is right there to address it. We don't want that happening at our house either. And then finally, community outreach. I made a separate slide for this in particular because I don't think a lot of people know that this goes on. So as you may have heard, our permits for a STR inspection and permit is $600. The program itself pays for itself. So the money that is paid from short-term rental owners go towards the staff and software programs that we need to regulate the short-term rentals. But we're a large group and we all love South Haven, and we said, what can we do to give a little bit more? So this was actually created a couple years ago when we sort of added it into the Alliance. But we've done a range of volunteering opportunities. Maybe you saw some of us at the Rams concession stands. We've done some We Care donation drives. We've done trail cleanups, we're doing beach cleanups. Last year we were able to give $2,500 to the Boys and Girls Club, $3,000 to city infrastructure, and I'm excited in May, if any of you have high school seniors, we'll be providing a $5,000 scholarship to a local high school student. Of course, I gotta talk about the dollars, right? The economic aspect of everything. So we as homeowners really strive, and we encourage our Alliance members especially to spend as much money in South Haven as you possibly can. Whether it's the contractors you hire, the furniture you buy, the restaurants you eat at, the retail you shop at. Of course, the places our guests go. A lot of us leave gifts in our home as well, so that our guests can kind of see, ooh, I like this cup of coffee, maybe I should go there and get a bag before I go home. $44.7 million in 2022 was spent in the city of South Haven by owners and our guests. This does not include the number for lodging. And I want to be clear here that there's a lot of tourism dollars that come to the city of South Haven. This isn't just the tourism number as a whole. This is specifically divided into the percentage that are coming from short-term rental homeowners. That's an estimated 413 jobs and $12.2 million in local wages and income. Now, I'd be remiss to not talk about opportunity cost, right? Well, what if these homes were not short-term rentals? What if they were second homeowners? What if they were full-time residents? Of course, we have a lot of other revenue streams in South Haven. We have a lot of great industry in South Haven. So let's look at it if it wasn't just short-term rentals. So if we took all the short-term rentals and we transitioned them into second homes and into full-time residents, it's estimated we would generate 36 jobs and around $1.36 million. But all the STRs are gone. So that is a net loss of 370 jobs and $10.9 million. Now this is the part that I step back personally and I look at it as not just a short-term rental homeowner, but as a mother who has a son in the school system and who's planning on building our family here. I think that's a pretty stark number to think about. I'm going to put this one out there because I hear some things made and I know it's really easy to use short-term rentals as a scapegoat for this. But short-term rentals, when you're looking at all of how the homes are used, make up 16% of all the housing right now that was exempt and non-exempt. 33% of that 16% were occupied year-round, whether it's the homeowner living in the home themselves, whether it's being converted into a long-term rental, or it's continuing to be used as a short-term rental in the off-season. 49% of the homes are second homeowners. I live in a house currently that has second homeowners on either side. The neighbor behind me is a short-term rental. The neighbor across from me is a full-time resident. I think it's pretty amazing that we live in a community that's so beautiful and has so much to give that all these people want to be here no matter what stage of life you're in. And I don't say this to say anything positive or negative against second homeowners, full-time residents, STRs, anything. I just think it's important to understand those facts. I lived in my own rental this past winter. I was here at Halloween. I understand when the lights are out, but it is not all due to short-term rentals. Of course, thinking about the history of South Haven, I love going down the trail, reading about this, seeing this on the Visitors Bureau, and looking back in the 1900s when we were considered the Catskills of the Midwest. And then shortly after, we're taking by boat thousands of people from Chicago to the city of South Haven. And I especially love how we've decided to do our lodging, because it is immersed in our communities. And people like myself had the opportunity to come in, live inside the neighborhoods themselves, and get to be amongst all of you and see what it's like to live and be in South Haven and want to continue to come here. We don't have a 15-story Hilton hotel sitting on Monroe Boulevard overlooking Lake Michigan, right? It's all amidst the community. And we do have a number of other lodging opportunities in South Haven. We have campgrounds, we have hotels, but it's important to note that last year alone, all lodging was 100% fully occupied in the summer months. So this isn't displacing lodging in the city. If we didn't have short-term rentals, people would just stay elsewhere. And when it comes to residents in general, I like this quote. This is from a Harvard Business Review. It states, many studies have found that STRs can generate positive, long-term residential growth in terms of stronger tax revenues, with growing property values and higher demand for new residential construction. This is sort of my summary slide here. You've heard it already. The cap has been met. This is what it is. This is the landscape of what short-term rentals look like in this community. And my background's in product marketing, so my ask would be we follow the same path of a product. When you launch a product, you have to give it a good 18 months before you can really know if it's going to succeed or fail. I would like to propose that we take the ordinance that we have in place. We've been working diligently with staff. They've been adding new software programs. We're working at better communication. Let's give it an opportunity to work. Let's just see how this works in our community, how rentals are being regulated today, the amount of efforts that we're making as a group, and give it a little breather for a while to actually see if this program works and spend our time on other important things in this community. Then let's come back and see, hey, was that working? Did we make the right decision or not? We now have learned a lot in the last 18 months. And I want to mention, we have pride. We have pride in our homes. We have pride that our guests have a lot of experiences here. We ask for your respect. We've had instances in our own home. I mentioned the things people said to me. I've had people trespass on my property. I even had somebody come in my house and yell at the people inside my home. We ask that you look at the family members and the people that are behind those boxes on the road before you walk up the driveway, before you go in that backyard. And then, of course, we love South Haven, and we're South Haven, too. That's why we are here. That's why we keep coming back here. We do have a website. It is shvra, I love they call it shivra.org. You can learn a little bit more about our Lions. We also have member stories on there. So we have a blog. If you want to subscribe to our newsletter, you'll see when we put new ones out. But if you're curious who we are and how we got here, you can read a little bit more on our website. So thank you.
Walt and Ashley, many thanks for doing what is really the purpose of tonight, and that's to inform. Now, this is an information session, and I think we've been duly informed, and I want to give kudos to all of you for allowing some patience and openness in listening to these excellent reports. We're going to take a little break, but then we'll come back, and we're going to be informed some more from you. And so we're going to be looking for some questions and comments. I'll share a little bit more about that when we come back from break. Something to say?
Yes, please. If you need to use the restrooms, if you go out this hallway, there's just the male and female restrooms right out there. If you have a comment card, please drop them off to any city staff. We're just walking around. I'll be walking around myself if you need to drop one off. All right, see you in 5 minutes.
Okay. We're going to be responding to a number of questions. A number of you nicely put down these questions on some cards. What we're going to do is we're going to ask you, if you do pen a card, to come up to the microphone here and to pose your question. The intent of this is really just to create some information and some dialogue, but we really don't want to kind of break this thing down and have really all of our time spent on merely one question. So we're going to ask that we really try to confine the question to 2 minutes. And we have a timekeeper who's going to be managing this You'll see the timepiece here on the screen. So that we want to do this for one purpose. We want to create a lot of community dialogue here, and so the more that we can have participants, the better. Does that make sense? Good. Okay. So let's go with question number 1.
Well, I guess I'll just read out the names so they can
Yeah.
come on up. And I'll read 3 people up here. So Robert Wertheimer, Dan Agnello, and Lisa Croupier. Please line up. And whoever wants to go first, just state your name again.
Dan Agnello. I'd like to take exception to one of the items that was presented about if you had STRs that were used for residents.
Can you hear in the back?
I think it's pretty, I don't think you can hear, no. That's as high as it goes, sorry guys. I'll be as close as I can. But STRs that, we didn't have STRs that could be used for houses and whatever else. And if you looked at the report, and I don't think the report is issued finally, but they got statistics from the report, and I questioned Jim Rowley about that because he didn't include a lot of things that homeowners would do in the winter time or whatever, or during the summer that STRs did. Like, there's no renovations for existing residents. There's no landscaping. There's no whatever, carpet cleaning, whatever. And that's why that number difference between STRs and homes used, if they were not STRs, is so different. Also, I don't have anything against STRs. Some of the people that stayed next to us, whatever, have been really great. They come, I tell them, if they're new, I say, we tell them about the restaurants, things to do, and how great our city is. But we've had problems with parties, over occupancy, parking is unbelievable, and also enforcement of personal STRs. So I think I'm not against them, what we should do is reduce the number of them by attrition and get rid of the ratio. One of the problems that we have is, I live in one of the PUDs, so they can have as many STRs as they want. They can have 100% if they want it. Okay? We have 18 homes that are complete now, 45% are STRs. We are the only full-time residents in that PUD. Just a good idea. Also, something about the city council meeting Monday night, they were talking about STR houseboats. Because
30 seconds.
Thank you. Last year, St. Joe Company built 2 houseboats, brought them to South Haven. And at present, we don't have any rules restricting them. I would challenge Nick to write up a moratorium so at the next meeting, the city council can go on it until they come up with some rules. Thank you.
You want our name?
Yeah, just state your name again, so.
Lisa Croupier is 561.
Sorry, Lisa. I think I can help a little bit. So for everyone doing a public speaking, this is a kind of directional microphone. If you could kind of try to aim it to you. I kept it low because when the city clerk was up here, I realized I put it way too high. But just try to aim it a little bit towards you. That might help with the volume too.
Lisa Croupier is 561 Indiana. I'm reading this letter that was written by Christine Yoon and her husband Joe Meyer. They moved here in November 19th from Portland, Oregon, seeking friendly neighbors and respite from big city life, but they since have departed and moved back to Portland. As residents of the 100 block of Superior, we had exactly 2 year-round residents on our block. Often during the winter months, we felt like we were the only people in town. As South Haven came out of the pandemic, we received the full impact of the city's love of short-term rentals and tourists. The houses on each side of us were short-term rentals, and this past summer was like being in a revolving door with people coming and going every few days. This meant that every few days we had to have conversations with vacationers about not being too loud late at night, or yes, those are our vegetables and berries, please do not pick them. We even had people walking through our front and backyards. One woman who was renting for 10 days said as she was leaving that she felt sorry for us having to live next to short-term rentals. The straw that broke the camel's back was when someone in an RV parked halfway in our driveway one evening. My husband was driving for Star Transit and had to be at work at 6:30 a.m. He went out and no one responded to his knock on the door. Concerned that we were blocked in, we called the police. The next thing we knew, the irate owner of the RV was screaming at us through the living room window. It is very unpleasant living among entitled tourists. All in all, we were very disappointed in the city's stance to preserve the status quo of the supporting businesses and policies that favor tourists and not our year-round residents. This protectionism of the tourist industry, thank you, and the businesses serving it convinced us that South Haven was not a place we could call home. These policies actually kept us away from downtown and from supporting local merchants. The lack of concern for year-round residents was a huge factor in our decision to leave South Haven and move back to Portland.
Thank you.
Really tight this up. I don't mind grabbing one of these things. I'm kind of used to it. I'm Robert Wertheimer. I have been in this city for over 50 years, either full-time or now part-time. And I'm going to speak real quick on both sides of the issue. As I said, I grew up in this town. I went to college at Hope. Woo! Yeah. And I moved to the other side of the state to get work. If the city wants to bring in people, they need to bring in businesses, jobs, not necessarily, manufacturing like it has been in the past, but there's all sorts of wonderful opportunities for businesses to come in and fill up the houses with something besides short-term rentals. The reason we have so many short-term rentals is because the jobs left. If you bring back the jobs, you'll have fewer houses for short-term rentals. It'll fix a lot of your issues, but the one issue it won't fix, of course, is the cost of housing, which is going to go up regardless because it's still a demand for the houses that are out there. To speak on the other side of things, I live behind Maplegate, which they've just said they are trying to promote business short-term rentals in Maplegate, which by doing that, they have allowed Maplegate to do all sorts of fun things, like have their grade 4 feet higher than my property, like drain on my property, like, oh, we'll fix this drainage. Oh, by the way, they're supposed to have opacity so that I don't see the houses. There's no opacity between my properties and their properties.
30 seconds left.
Thank you. So, the city needs to regulate. They need to be responsible for their actions. They need to take care of the full-time residents or part-time residents and just do what they're supposed to be doing, especially when it comes to noise. They're creating environments that will create more noise for the neighbors.
Next three names are Mark McClendon, Mike Campbell, and Carrie Weber.
Mark McClendon, I live on Phoenix Street. My question to council is, I'm interested in what other commercial business will be allowed to operate in the residential area? And if not, then why are lodging facilities allowed to?
Well, there's a number of home-based businesses that are already allowed to operate in the residential districts, and it's varied. But unfortunately, the way that this came about is that short-term rentals are not considered commercial under this ordinance. I know other ordinances in the state of Michigan do consider them as commercial, but in the city's ordinances, they're not considered commercial use. Thank you for the question. Mike?
I'll wait for the clock to be reset, please.
Very good.
Mike Campbell, I have an observation, a request, and an anecdote.
Mike.
Speak to the mic.
The observation is this. Whatever you think of the Rowe economic impact study, there was one particular statistic that stood out to me, and that was collected from third-party data about the occupancy of STRs in South Haven. In July, the peak of high season for this community, we only had 91% occupancy. I believe that particular statistic in and of itself creates a presumption that the council needs to consider that there are too many STRs in this city. Think about too many airlines that don't have enough seats, or hotels where you can't get a room. Compare that to the situation where we can't even fill them all in the highest month of our vacation season in July. The request, City Council, please, when you're considering this and working on a solution, please involve the community, which has become divided by all of this issue that's going on while the data gathering was being done. And instead, involve the people so that people can work together and come together again. And then finally, the anecdote, if I have enough time.
30 seconds.
This past weekend, 2 young men from the track team came around selling these Big B coupon books. We bought one because it's the right thing to do. There were very few other houses on our block where there are occupants. And I thought, gee, that's not good for them. When Mr. Placati talked about the 491 houses, I did a little calculation. If only 25% had purchased from those empty houses, they would have collected more than $3,000. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Carrie Weber. I'm a short-term rental owner. I have been coming to South Haven with my husband for over 20 years, and our family comes here regularly. We're here every week. Most days, actually, we're here. We live nearby closely, so we come to the house regularly. And we started doing it because it was a non-livable house that we decided to do while my husband was fighting cancer. But I wanted to show the positive. There's been a lot of negatives. I wanted to show the positives. We're part of 3 community groups. We've helped some local community full-time residents use our home for temporary housing. I also know 2 other families that have done that. We've helped repair sidewalks at our cost. We have had 3 different families we've housed for different family gatherings that were full-time residents in the community and needed extra space. We give to the Community Foundation, the backpack program. We volunteer our time to the schools. We've given to prom, the athletic boosters, different community organizations. We've given baking supplies to the teachers and the kids, dog food to the local places. And we follow strict rules with our occupancy. I talk to every renter that comes into my home. I talk to them about the importance of being good neighbors. I get a copy of their driver's license and have them sign a rental agreement. We're looking to attract families, and I find it very important that we support our local community members. We have so far in the last 3 years or so, every penny that we've made with our short-term rentals, we've put back into the community and back into the homes. And it's the untold story that you never hear. It's it's easy to say we're negative and none of us are around, but that's not always true. And I'd love to share that with some more information if anybody is interested in how some of us are giving back and sharing with other owners to get them involved. And lastly, I ask all of you, whether you're an owner or not, to get involved in the community, give back with time, money, whatever you can give. Thank you.
Three more names: Fred Kaufman, Kathy Blackburn, and Gerald Webb. Okay, yes. Fred, are you looking to speak? And Kathy Blackburn. No. Okay. I have Pete Wheely, Linda Lamb. Go ahead, Kathy. You're Kathy.
Hello, Kathy Blackburn here, STR owner. Dan, where you at? Miss Buddy. All right, so for those of you that don't know, Dan that was up here first, he was my euchre partner during winter euchre tournaments. Go euchre in South Haven. It was a great time. Great way to meet community members. I see you, Ryan. So I'm a resident of the South Haven School District, though it may not be a city of South Haven. I live on the outskirts, on a little family farm, if you will. And my husband and I came to Michigan, so another call back to Mark. He mentioned Columbus, Ohio. I know what's going to unify the crowd here. I graduated from Ohio State. Ooh. I'm sorry.
Oh, age.
But becoming a Michigan convert has been, though it pains me to say, like a really great experience, being in the community and being a part of it. Anytime we rent our place that is down on the river out to folks, especially when they bring their dogs, shout out to my girl and Decadent Dogs, we always make sure they have frozen dog treats from the local businesses and everything, and so we really want to make sure that they feel a part of South Haven. I wanted to read a quick review that we had got. As a side note, we rent our rental all year round, and I'm happy to report we've got about 75% occupancy of the time that we've owned it, so we're not just in that 12 to 13 week minority. So the review goes, we're so excited to have found your cottage. It will be our family's spring break. We've been in Grand Rapids for 13 years and have not been to South Haven. I've heard such great things. My husband, kids, and I are so excited to spend time together and explore this weekend. Thank you for sharing such a special place with us. So wanted to close with just a heartwarming togetherness, right? We can make this work in terms of sharing our community with those that really want to come back and enjoy it with their families, as well as going to Euchre nights.
Linda Lamb. I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, Buckeye as well. As you know, I'm probably the root cause of all this. Back with the Cass Street Hotel, I went through hell, pretty much. Had police protection. But I have to agree with Walt here on one thing. Shame on all of us. We shouldn't be here tonight. We should be able to be neighbors. I've given an olive branch. I give Christmas cards, and my neighbors still refuse to talk to me. It's sad. Let's act like adults. Let's treat people like we want to be treated. I try to say hello, and they flatly refuse to say hello to me, but I don't give up. We're all humans. We have feelings. I live here full-time in the winter, so I do eat here. And I spend over 6 figures at local stores to supply my rentals. And frankly, I'm hurt, and I feel sad for the city council. We've heard this same thing for 7 years. It's got to stop. Let's grow up. Let's work together, beautify the town, clean it up. I want to be a good neighbor, and I trust you. If something happened to my neighbor, I'd be the first one there to rescue them. Thank you.
In the meantime, I'll call 3 more names: Martha Lorsdorfer, Todd Heinrich, and Ryan Cervantes. Go ahead, Pete.
Good evening. My name is Peter Wheatley. I live at 565 Monroe Boulevard. I can't talk too long. I write letters and stuff, so here's a little essay I wrote about short-term rentals. It goes like this. We've heard a great deal regarding our little town, South Haven, and short-term rental situation. It's obvious to anyone, out of control. So what do we do about it? Well, many good-intentioned citizens have begun a path to freedom. We want to make neighborhoods back for ourselves and for our children's children. When's it going to stop? If city fathers and mothers want to protect our town from undue stress and expectation for the sake of money, then so be it. Carry on with the status quo. Or we can take a new look at our short-term rentals and propose new ways of functioning in the 21st century. My home is at 565 Monroe Boulevard, South Haven. It was built in 1927. I wonder, I doubt that the original owners of the house, one of the house on Monroe Boulevard, anticipated the number of short-term rentals in our neighborhoods. But that's where we are today, folks, in 2023, out of control, man. How can we accommodate convenient interests in a civilized way for all tax-paying citizens? That's the rub. And certainly hope you can find a suitable compromise that addresses all the needs and desires of the community. Let us carry on, sally forth the original solution to our short-term rental problems. Speak our truth as best we can for the benefit of all. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Martha Lorsdorfer. I live on Delaware Court. I want to address my comments specifically to the City Commission members that are here. Last August, 422 residents in this city signed a petition to put on the ballot a measure to amend the short-term rental ordinance. In the last election, 1,088 people voted. That means that 40% of those who voted asked this to go on the ballot. What happened was that using taxpayer dollars, the City Commission or whoever represents them hired an outside law firm so that it could pick apart that amendment and find reasons why it was not worthy to be on the ballot. What happened to me is my trust was broken with the City Commission members. But here's what I don't understand. Let's pretend for a minute that that ballot initiative was egregiously wrong. Still, the City Commissioners never talked or listened to the voters who signed that petition. It never had to be on the ballot. It never had to go that far. But they didn't talk to us, and they were all aware of the concerns about short-term rentals. So now 8 months later, the City Commission wants to listen to us. Well, my feeling is that ship has sailed. We want you to do something. I really think we can all work together. I don't think this is a black or white issue. We want you to rein in this monster. We want you to care more about our city and all of our concerns, short-term rentals together, than any special interest group that might be represented here tonight. This is not a chess game where one side wants to win at the cost of the other side. The residents are not special interest groups. We want to be able to trust our elected officials again, that they will be transparent and honest.
My name is Todd Heinrich. I live at 357 Moore Court, it's just in the neighborhood, off in the Pearl Street neighborhood, behind the Arts Center. My wife and I moved there 4 years ago. We've lived here for 33 years, depending on who you are. That's either a really short time or a really long time. I've been told by people who disagree with me on short-term rentals, I'm a active leader in Neighborhoods Need Neighbors, that I'm too new here and I don't know what I'm talking about. This has always been here, and this is the way it is, and I don't understand. I was told that by somebody that my wife delivered. Think about that. I've been here her entire life. Another fellow that's criticized me was this tall when I moved here as an adult and started a business. I'd like to correct something of the history. I'd like to correct something of the history. 10 years ago, the citizens, the voters, started putting pressure on City Council to regulate. Regulation generally is perceived as limiting something, but our initial optimism when the ordinance passed disappeared quickly because the floodgates opened and we had double the number of short-term rentals. We didn't regulate short-term rentals, we opened the door to them. 10 years ago, we were all in front of City Council saying, please regulate this, please reduce it. And the opposite has happened. So here we are again, 10 years later, asking cities, please, City Council, put this on the ballot. This is too much weight for you. This isn't what you volunteer for. You essentially are volunteers. Put this on the ballot. 400 people asked you to put 250 cap, 2 per block. Please put that on the ballot. Let the voters decide. Let the residents decide. Thank you.
Read your names, Roxanne Leader, Amanda Sukup, and forgive me if I say his name wrong, Jeremy Zubko, C-Z-U-B-K-O.
Hello, my name is Roxanne Reeder. I live at 751 Fair Ridge Road, and I vote in Ward 1. Once again, the Roby report has come out, and we see that South Haven is a tourist-based economy. I happen to own a business in downtown South Haven. We have the short-term rentals attribute $27 million to the economy, and 413 workers are employed due to short-term rentals. I happen to employ 6 employees full-time at my store. 5 of them live in the city of South Haven. The 6th lives in the township. Now, if you were to pull that money out of this economy, I estimate that I would have to change my business model 20%. And that includes letting 1.3 people go. And my employees like their job, and they would like to stay employed.
30 seconds.
Thank you. The Roby report was also pretty emphatic that the cost of housing here in South Haven is not due to short-term rentals. I think we can all determine what it's due to. It's a very desirable location. We're on the lake, and the houses along the lake there cost $1 million, with the average income of a person in Michigan being $56,000. Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Amanda Sukup, and I've been asked to talk about how affordable homes and STRs correlate or don't correlate. So I'm going to be talking really fast. I'm not talking about subsidized housing here. That's a whole different subject. I've been told that affordable homes are priced between $211,000 to $250,000. And if you want homes on the south side to be $211,000, then you better hope that Lake Michigan dries up, because it's pretty much what's going to happen for houses on the south side to be $250,000. It's just not going to happen. So think about that. As long as we have our gorgeous lake, our amenities, our homes are going to be holding their value, and they're going to be holding the value on the south side just as well, whether you have short-term rentals or not. I've been selling real estate for over 20 years, and I've seen the prices rise. And I know that hurts the locals, because 50% of my business are the locals. So I know that hurts the locals. And we're trying to make that better for them. We are seeing market corrections, which means that the prices have leveled off. We expect that to continue, but that's a whole different subject too. One thing that I would like to add to some of the fact finding, in 2022, South Haven had a high percent of units that are affordable, had a higher percent of units that are affordable to sell more than St. Joe did. St. Joe has no STRs within their city. Well, they have some down that say, oh, shoot. Okay. Our market stats, okay, we'll forget that. Do we need more affordable housing? Heck yes, we do. Just like the rest of the country, let's talk about more land to the east, lower utility hookups, encourage more building. This issue has shattered this town for too long. If we continue to let this shadow every issue that we cut, everything that we're trying to do, we're not getting work done. So let's get this done. Let's make this go away. Thank you.
My name is Jeremy Zuke. As a homeowner in South Haven, it's easy to understand the demand to visit and live here. It's also easy to understand the need for a thriving economy and affordable housing. These are issues that affect virtually every community today. It's hard for me to understand why a majority of hotels in South Haven are far away from the beaches in downtown. I also struggle to understand why there isn't stronger enforcement of sidewalk clearing during winter. But on the flip side, punitive enforcement of garbage and recycling bans, instead of more disruptive issues. Finally, I struggle to understand why limiting the number of short-term rentals has become the focus of so much attention without any meaningful data around what outcomes will actually be achieved. I highly encourage everyone to support zoning to allow compelling hotels to reduce the insatiable demand for additional short-term rentals. Support enforcement that addresses issues that actually impact homeowners. Consistent application of maximum percentages in every structure. And make decisions on short-term rentals that are based on data and measurable outcomes, rather than a hope of finding easy solutions to complex issues. Enactment of emotionally charged ordinances focused solely on one piece of the problem will
30
only
seconds.
amplify the problem areas and create scapegoats and not solutions.
Next three names, John Rorsdorfer, Misha Newman, and Ryan Dieter.
John Lorsdorfer, Delaware Court. Let's take a look at some of the surveys that have been collected through the community. The Neighbors Need Neighbors did one about 1.5 years ago. 59% believe the balance was wrong between permanent residents and the STRs. 51% don't want more STRs in the neighborhood. And 74% believe that an STR is a business and not a residence. Guess what? The Court of Appeals and the Michigan Supreme Court agreed. Short-term rentals are commercial businesses, they're not residential uses, and they're inconsistent with residential uses of property. The vision that was done just recently, August, it said many participants hold strongly negative views of the impact short-term rentals have on their neighborhoods and the community as a whole. There's a widely held perception that more short-term rentals have been permitted than are healthy and are eroding the very characteristics of the community. Also, it noted participants conveyed a sense of disappointment with their local officials stemming from a perceived failure to properly address and resolve the matter. I think that's a very interesting comment here. Also, the Roby report, which has been mentioned. They also noted parking congestion raised issues, the city was not enforcing their ordinances, and some neighborhoods should be reserved for single-family housing only. The 1-to-4 ratio does not address the issues of neighborhood density, especially the large concentration of STRs in residential neighborhoods.
30 seconds.
Okay. The Kircher report, the community survey, that's another one. The responses demonstrate that STRs have become such a prevalent issue for residents in the city of South Haven, and they felt that the amount of STRs should be lessened. Finally, the Upjohn report done a few years ago. We recommend the city of South Haven consider restricting STRs to a certain area in the city. To be allowed in the R1 Central District, STRs should not be allowed in residential areas. I suggest that, okay, thank you.
Hi, Ryan Dieters. If you've seen me at one of these before, I was at 406 North Shore until about today, because essentially we were run out of town. But I'm not going to get into all of that. I just want to get into a few basic questions that I think everybody, if they were honest, would agree with. There's this underlying assumption that if that house was not an STR, it would be a nice family with 3 kids. Based on what? What data do we look at over the last decade that supports this? If you look at the data that came out in the Roby report, they looked at utility data and they saw that 49%, almost half of homes in the city, were snowbirds and second homeowners. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a great town to live in. I totally understand the desire to retire to a town like this or own a vacation home here, but that's half of homes that are dark part of the year. Now, why do we assume that that's not going to be a continuing trend if all of those STRs go away? Why are second homeowners and retirees not going to be the ones buying those? That just doesn't make any sense to me. And then if you look at the census data for demographics, in 2010, around 20% of South Haven was over the age of 65. In 2020, when the new census data came out, around 40% of South Haven was over the age of 65.
30 seconds.
Again, there's nothing wrong with that, but based on what data are we not believing that second homeowners and retirees are going to be the ones that buy the houses if all of the STRs are eliminated or run out of town? It just doesn't make any logical sense to me to assume that the desired outcome that you want to believe is what's going to happen is young families with great jobs and kids coming into the schools is going to be the obvious outcome, because it just doesn't gel with the last 10 years of what's happening in the city.
Susan Heinrich, Vika Anderson, and Roger Ulev.
Hi, I'm Vicki Anderson. I've been one of the members of the city council a bunch of years ago. I will. Okay. I'll see if I can make myself understood. I was working in South Haven when I got divorced, and I didn't have a place to live. So my friend, who was going to take care of me, put me in an apartment so that I could walk to the work where I was going. And then when I left that particular apartment, I bought a house. My mother helped me to do that. And I decided that I needed to have a house for people who wanted to work in South Haven, because there aren't any houses in South Haven where people can work. Now, they're pretty much not available at all. But the houses that I was working at were helping other people come and have a place to live.
30 seconds.
And that's what I did. And I still have that house for people who want to work in South Haven.
Hi, my name is Susan Heinrich, and I just want to give you a little medical perspective. My husband and I moved here to South Haven in 1990 after I finished my residency in family medicine. I moved directly here because I wanted to live and work in the community that I was practicing in. And I've been very honored to be providing care to our community for 32 years and continue to do so. I was a member of South Haven Family Physicians. My long-term partners, Dr. Richard Allen and Dr. David Lisko, have retired. Because of that, difficult to run a private practice, so I joined Bronson South Haven. We're trying hard to recruit medical providers and make a good future for our health care. Unfortunately, it's been very difficult. We have new providers that come. They cannot find affordable housing. 3 of them have settled in South Haven, drive up here 30 miles to work, and 1 has already left after a year. We're very worried about the health care and maintaining good health care in our community. Residents have been displaced by short-term rental businesses. We are a destination community. We're not a home. We need people to live here, work here, and contribute to our community. The money that the short-term rentals bring does not make a community. It's the people who make the community. We need people in our community. Like diet and exercise, it's not going to be easy. We must plan for our future, and we need the courage to create the best preventative health care plan for the future of South Haven and keep the neighbors in our neighborhoods. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Roger Lett, 30-year resident of South Haven, and I'm not sure where to begin. Maybe it's the city and the hate group overreach on personal freedoms and obligations of a homeowner in this city, but that's another topic. I've heard a lot about the problems, the concerns with these short-term rentals, but I've seen nothing documented, nothing quantified. There's absolutely no data presented on what the problem is other than an abstract feeling that this should be a city of the 1960s, which it is no longer, is it? Ashley has nailed it on the head. All those yellow dots on the slide she showed are the vitality of this community. Without them, the city doesn't have the tax revenue, the shops and the restaurants that, well, the group probably doesn't participate in them, but I do all year long. But I've been told that I can't rent now that I'm a retiree for a few months in summer. But I'm here all winter long supporting this community when I'm sure most of this group that is so against the short-term rentals isn't. But again, it's personal rights. What right do you people have to take away my rights as a human being and a homeowner? You don't. That's another story. But again, the problem has not been quantified. You talk about the problem, but what is the problem? I mean, I have lived here since 1980. And when I moved here, houses were dilapidated. I didn't have a neighbor. There was nobody in it. I fixed it up. I came here on weekends, weekend after weekend after weekend. And finally, when I retired, I decided to rent, and I can't. And guess what? Who were these renters? Grandparents, parents, and kids. Not causing a single problem. Just coming to enjoy this community that I think we all love. Except some people want to take our rights away. And it's not right. It's not right.
Now the next two names will be Ron Klug, Jen Sistra, and Jim Wright. Pass from Ron Klug, and we'll take Kendrick Kingsbury.
Good evening. For those of you that don't know me, I know some of you in the room, my name is Jen Sistrunk. I'm the Executive Director of the South Haven Visitors Bureau. We represent all lodging types here in South Haven, and we collect from, we represent a broad range of the areas here in South Haven, so it's South Haven, Van Buren County, and Casco Township. We're a nonprofit organization that's 100% funded by visitors who pay a 5% assessment of their lodging fees directly to us. Those funds are used for marketing, local sponsorships, placemaking, destination development, and community enhancement projects. Those visitor dollars have assisted in funding a diverse amount of local projects. Just to name a few, we have a Phoenix Street kayak launch that will be completed in the fall. We maintain the Black River. We help facilitate the downtown holiday lights. We helped with acquisition of public restrooms, bike racks, splash pad, disc golf park, New Year's Eve celebration, and just next week we're hosting 150 fourth graders on the Cal Haven Trail to teach them about being responsible trail users, so we're really proud of that. These community enhancement projects that benefit both residents and guests are what set our organization apart from other convention and visitors bureaus around the state. We believe that investing in our community and providing facilities and experience for all people in South Haven is essential and is something you'll not find in other areas. Our diverse membership is also something that sets us apart. For example, in New Buffalo, their Convention and Visitors Bureau has 2 members. We have 40. 6 of them are short-term rental management agencies, and they make up 40% of our revenue that puts back into the community those things that I just listed. The City of South Haven, our local experienced vacation rental management agencies, and our thriving Visitors Bureau are a testament to the work and efforts that our experts in this industry, in this community, have put forth to make sure we're responsible, we're attentive, and we understand how to maintain a balanced and well sought after beachfront community. We know what happens in the community.
That's your time.
That's my time. If you need us, you can come back.
I need a transfusion of whatever she'd been drinking, Laura. I would have been more coherent a while ago. Just a couple of observations. One, it's very nice that people, person after person who's come up has said, yes, we tell our guests that they have to do X, Y, and Z. The fact that there are complaints about X, Y, and Z suggests that the visitors aren't necessarily listening to all of those lovely instructions. Point one. Point two, I wish I would, what's your organization, ma'am? South Haven Vacation Rental Alliance. I listened to the number of dollars that they pumped into the community as well as the person who preceded me. And what that strikes me is, wow, there's a lot of money to be made in short-term rentals. And if there's money to be made, they're going to try and make it as often, as long. It ain't going to go away. And if I had any other ideas, they're gone with the wind.
Hello everybody, my name is Kendra Kingsbury, and I know a lot of you, which is really fun. I work at Decadent Dogs downtown South Haven. I moved here about 5 years ago. I live across the street from the high school over there on Ravinia Drive. And something that I've realized when I moved here is there is such a disconnect with residents and city council and just what people think and want. I have no stake in either group. I am firmly in the other category here tonight. So I want you to take that and hear that when I speak to the next kind of couple of things. One thing I would love from the Neighborhoods Need Neighbors is a revamp of the Neighborhoods Need Neighbors. Instead, maybe make it, won't you be my neighbor? I was a tourist here before I moved here. I grew up in Michigan in a little town called Rockford, moved to Chicago, and I did not start vacationing here or even coming to South Haven until I lived in Chicago, and my family started renting a place on South Haven Street. It was awesome. We loved it. When my husband and I decided, you know, rent is going crazy in Chicago, it's time to move. Where should we go? Why not South Haven? It seems really great. It was awesome because we're a young couple. We have no children. So if we wanted to go somewhere else and move, it's a rental community, so we could still have a home that we could possibly rent if we wanted to. Turns out I fell in love. Okay, I got 40 seconds. I fell in love. I moved here. I started working at Decadent Dogs, the best place in the entire world. And I sit on the board for the South Haven Theater Series, the South Haven Center for the Arts. I'm a proud member of the Elks. My husband's the American Legion. And we are part of the South Haven Garden Club. You guys, we can be welcoming. It's a good thing to welcome community. I love this community. I love being part of this community. And I'm gonna put it back on everybody here, neighbors or not. What are you doing to invite and welcome people into this community? Are you disparaging businesses because they disagree with you publicly? Are you being welcoming and inviting? Let's do things. Let's bring people here because it's a beautiful lake. We have a wonderful town, and let's share it with people. We can do this. We can find common ground.
We'll get the next two names. Mickey Paul, Rosalie Picotti, and Joe Wilkins.
Can I just say, I want to drink what you're drinking. Okay, thank you. So let me know afterwards, okay?
hello everybody. My name is Mickey Paul and I live on 871 Indiana Street. And my comment is about short-term rentals, which is way too much. But here's the thing. If you want to start getting people here, what you got to do is get affordable houses. And you draw everybody back. And see, then the schools to get their number, the business to get their number, and this is what we need, affordable houses. And that's what really is what we really do need. That's it.
My name's Rosalie Placati, and I live at 559 Monroe Boulevard. I wasn't going to speak tonight. I'm intimately involved with neighborhoods, need neighbors, as I sleep with the organizer. I've listened to everybody tonight, and a lot of this does make sense. But let me tell you about the nuances that are hard to quantify. When a mom can't let her little one ride her bike around the block because it's full of strangers. When you don't know, and yes, I'm so happy that all the short-term rentals are so wonderful, and they are. We've met a ton of people. We talk to everybody, we welcome them. We love where I live, we love where we live too. But what the situation really is that we've got money and we've got community, and the two will always hit. I also feel strongly, and I will address this to everybody on council, none of this needed to happen. We've been asking just for a conversation. Can we sit down and talk? Can we work with, your presentation was lovely, I forgot your name. Ashley. But Ashley, of course you know that, Annie. We've been asking for a conversation forever. I'm so glad we're here tonight. I ask council to keep it up. Let's work on it. Narratives have been prepared, and thank you. A narrative about us that we're a bunch of old white people. Thank you. That my husband's an idiot, he doesn't know anything. I love all those. I love being called out at meetings by name. None of that needed to happen. Let's work together.
Joe Wilkins, 811 Indiana Street. I left the Bishop Conference early in Memphis, Tennessee to be here. That's how important this issue is. The damage is done when it comes to the black community, but I refuse to watch other families being hurt. As a resident of 57 years, as to many others, South Haven is, as a result of short-term rental, has become a very lucrative place for investment. But to those of us that have vested our whole life here, South Haven is more than a place of investment. It's home, it's where we worked all our lives to save and retire, it's where we raised and sent our kids to school, it's where we form lasting and loving relationships and friendships with other neighbors. It's where we all dream of getting older and sharing a brighter future with our kids and grandkids. But sadly, because of the unbalance of short-term rentals in our city, many of us have seen that dream become a vicious nightmare. Where the character of our city has been changed for the worse, where our neighborhoods that once were is no longer, as a pastor, short-term rental has placed undeserved stress on pastors trying to maintain local churches, all because of the loss of year-round families. As a minority, short-term rental has been a major tool used causing gentrification and the growing loss of diversity in our city. As a vested year-round resident, short-term rental has robbed me and many others of the joy of having year-round neighbors and neighborhoods. Short-term rental has depleted the affordable housing market and has robbed many of others of the opportunity to create memories in South Haven. And lastly, as a father, the overreach of short-term rental has saddened me to know that my son and daughter is being forced to live in other cities, and because of the lack of affordable housing, as well as the thought of getting older and being robbed of the opportunity to see my future grandkids grow up in this city. It saddens me, the thought of not being able to take them to school or games or to trips to the park. Therefore, it is my prayer that this city government will no longer allow our city to be hijacked by those that see South Haven as only a place of investment. I ask that the mayor, the city council, and the city manager will once and for all hear the voices of its residents, those of us that are vested in South Haven, and move quickly to preserve what's left of our city and neighborhood by striking a balance to the short-term rental issues. Thank you.
we're down to the last couple cards. So we got Jim Horan, Teresa Getman, and Dustin Hall. Oh, Jim left? Okay. Teresa Getman, Dustin Hall, and PJ Linderman.
Good evening. I think I know many of you. I love most of that I know on neighborhoods need neighbors, but I do not sleep with. Love Rosalie. I also love many of the people that support South Haven Vacation Rentals. What I love is that we're finding that we all want a solution. And it's really hard for me to hear that somebody walks into somebody's house and tells somebody else, that cannot be any of my friends. I know. That's hard to hear, and I know none of you would support that, taking the law into your own hands, but we have an opportunity. I was reading Reader's Digest. I swore the story was written by somebody here that was talking about their daughter's business and how they had to quarantine off part of the restaurant, not because people weren't coming, but because they couldn't have staff. And I thought, oh my God, who wrote this? And I went to read it, and it was somebody from Utah. This is not a South Haven issue alone. This is something across our country. And we have an opportunity, and we can point fingers all over the place, but there are always 3 pointing back at us. So if you aren't running for council and you don't like council, if you aren't running for mayor and you don't like the mayor, we can all do something. But here's an opportunity for us to be an example, not only for our youth, but to come together, thank you, and be an example for our country on how we make this thing work. Thank you.
I guess I'll crouch a little.
You can take it off.
Yeah, okay. Well, I just wanted to come up. There was a comment that was made earlier that I found really interesting and hadn't even considered. Someone pointed out that if all of the STRs went away, then why would we assume that those homes would fill up with young families with good jobs and permanent residents? And I guess we shouldn't. There were some statistics cited that said that there's a good chance that those homes would just be bought up by retirees and second homeowners, and those houses would still be dark for half the year. Now I can only come at this from my own personal perspective. I'm a physician. I have a young family. I'm a permanent resident. Been here for about 10 years. Living next to a retiree with a second home, that's not going to make me consider selling my house and leaving. But living next to an STR would. So that's the difference for who brought that up. That's all.
All right, that's the end of the comment cards that we've received. At this point,
we've gone and exhausted all the comment cards. Is there anyone else who would like to come to the microphone and offer a comment or two? Yes, sir, you're welcome to come up.
My name is Joe Reeser. I'm a city council person for Ward 1. Can you hear me? My job is simple. I listen to residents. That is why I was elected, and that's my job, and that's what I'll continue to do. So I'm going to work for the residents, but I have to balance it with working for all the businesses. And my heart goes out to any business in this town that thinks the loss of short-term rentals is going to hurt their business. But I would say this, after 5 years on city council, one other council person, and I'm paraphrasing, not quoting him, said he's never seen our city so divided, and I think we can see that tonight. It upsets me because I am on city council. So I have 2 pages of statistics I'm not going to go over. I think you heard enough of all that. But I am going to make everyone in this room a commitment I made to myself and a commitment I'll make to you. We need more than ever strong leadership in this town. That we can bring together all the people, businesses and residents, for a common solution, a balanced approach, a compromise. Strong leadership can stop this divide once and for all. Trying to make everyone happy is no longer an alternative. Decisions must be made that will be unpopular for some, but made for the betterment of the whole community. Long-term quality of life is more important than short-term dollars. Most importantly, we must act now. I've heard that from several people. So I want you to know, you have 1 city council person, and I believe all the rest. But I know I am willing, starting the next city council meeting, to start putting ideas on the board and have everyone talk about it, including those of you that want short-term rentals, including Linda Lamb, who I believe what you said, that you love this community. But we can't sit back and talk and talk. We've got to have people put up on the board our ideas and start to boil them down and come up with a solution. So I want you to know, we're going to work at it. I am going to work at it. And I've offered the short-term rental people in the past when they've spoken, that they can come and see me. I am open to talk to you. I can learn from you. And I want to come up with what's best for this community. Thanks.
Any other comments, or anybody else would like to share something? Going once? Twice? Okay, all right. Folks, I do a lot of work with organizations, and one of the things that I like to do with leaders is to share this comment. It's 5 words. The conversation is the relationship. Tonight was a community conversation. And I'm thinking about what's going on in our country where there's a lot of volatility right now. Some of you are familiar with a person by the name of Brene Brown. She's a sociologist. She said there are basically 30 emotions that we can tap into at any one time. But in the last 7 or 8 years, it's narrowed down to 3. Just 3 among 30. We're either happy, we're sad, or we're stinking angry. All right? I didn't see that tonight. Probably saw some happiness. But what I didn't see was being really angry. And that is a strong compliment to you for having a civil conversation tonight and providing the City Council with some great information, quite frankly, some ammunition for what they need to do. And so a huge word of thanks to this community and to all of you for investing your time in tonight. So I think that we need a round of applause to you. And since this is actually a formal meeting, we're going to ask that the City Council members, if you're willing to come up here for a motion of adjournment. Would you please come up?
Council, motion to adjourn. Make a motion to adjourn.
Second. Motion is second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
All right, thank you. Thank you, everybody.